Imagine being in the delivery room, exhausted, emotional, and eager to hold your newborn baby, only to watch your mother-in-law scoop him up before you even get the chance. Let me take a moment to walk you through what really happened, and if it hits close to home, feel free to show some love by liking, subscribing, or passing this along to someone who might need to hear it. I'm Haley. I'm 28, and I had my first baby not too long ago. My husband, Colton, and I had been waiting for this moment for months. I had imagined it so many times, holding my son for the first time, his little fingers grabbing mine, the warm skin-to-skin moment I'd dreamed of since we found out we were pregnant. But what actually happened still plays on repeat in my head, and not in a good way. I had a rough pregnancy, but I was holding it together. The real issue was Colton's parents, mostly his mom, Janet. From day one, she made it clear I wasn't good enough for her son. Roger, my father-in-law, was quieter but always backed her up. She criticized how I dressed, what I ate, how I decorated the nursery, everything. Still, I kept the peace, hoping things would get better once the baby arrived. That day, I went into labor unexpectedly. Things moved fast, then suddenly turned serious. I ended up needing an emergency C-section. I was scared, groggy from the meds, barely able to keep my eyes open. I remember hearing Caleb's first cry and feeling this mix of fear, relief, and love so strong it made me dizzy. I blinked, trying to stay awake, waiting for someone to place him on my chest. But instead, I heard another voice, Janet. "Oh my God, he's perfect," she said, like this was her moment. I turned my head, slow and heavy. And there she was, standing right there in the delivery room, cradling my baby in her arms like he was hers. I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. I just stared. Roger was standing beside her, grinning like they had won something. Where was Colton? He had stepped out to talk to a nurse, or maybe to call someone. I don't even know. I just know he wasn't there, and Janet and Roger were. Somehow, they had made their way in before me. The nurse looked uncertain, but nobody stopped them. Maybe Roger used that firm tone he always had, like he was in charge. When Colton came back, he froze. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, then at his mom holding our baby. I don't know if he was shocked or just didn't want to cause a scene, but I felt something inside me crack. By the time I finally got to hold Caleb, I didn't feel joy. I felt like something had been stolen from me, and honestly it had. The first time I met Janet, I was nervous but hopeful. Colton and I had just gotten serious, and he wanted me to meet his parents over dinner. I dressed nice, brought a little bouquet, and tried to make a good impression. But from the moment I walked in, I felt it. Her eyes scanned me like I was something under a microscope. She gave me a polite smile, but her tone was cold. She asked questions that felt more like tests. Where I worked, how long I planned to stay there, if my parents were still together. Not once did she ask what I liked or how Colton and I met. She already didn't like me. I could feel it. As the relationship got more serious, so did her comments. Every family dinner came with a backhanded compliment. "You're thinner than I expected," she once said. When we announced the pregnancy, her reaction was lukewarm. She said, "Well, guess it's happening then," and not much else. From there, things got worse. Janet inserted herself into every part of the pregnancy. She'd text me links to strollers I didn't ask for, send articles about what to eat and avoid, and even criticize the baby names we like. "Caleb sounds too soft," she said once. "Don't you want a strong name?" She told Colton we should do a real baby shower, not the one my best friend was planning, because hers would be more appropriate for family. She showed up to that shower uninvited anyway, bringing her own decorations and setting them up without asking. I was too shocked to say anything. Everyone noticed. No one said a word. Colton's response to all of this? She means well, or let's just keep the peace. I tried to explain how it made me feel, how I wanted this pregnancy to be mine, not Janet's second chance at motherhood, but he didn't get it, or didn't want to. I started dreading the birth. I had dreams where I was in labor, but someone else got to hold the baby first. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding. When we started planning the hospital details, I was clear. I didn't want anyone else in the delivery room except Colton and the medical team. But Janet pushed. She kept saying things like, "I need to be there when he arrives," and "It's tradition for the mother to be by her daughter's side." I reminded her I wasn't her daughter. She didn't care. In the end, Colton told her she could wait outside the room. But deep down, I had a feeling that wouldn't be the end of it. The day Caleb was born didn't go anything like I had imagined. My water broke late at night, and things moved faster than expected. At first, I thought I'd have time to settle in, breathe, prepare. But within an hour, doctors were throwing on scrubs and telling me the baby's heart rate had dropped. I barely had time to look at Colton before I was rushed into surgery. Everything after that felt like a blur. The lights were too bright, and the cold air in the operating room made my body shake. They gave me medication to stay awake, but it hit harder than I expected. I could hear voices, machines beeping, the doctor calling out instructions. but it all felt distant, like I was underwater. Then I heard him cry. Caleb. That sound, his first cry, cut through everything. I tried to lift my head, to say something, anything. My arms felt too heavy. My lips wouldn't move. All I wanted was to hold my son. That was it. Just hold him. But instead of feeling his tiny body on my chest, I heard a different voice. "Oh, my sweet baby boy," Janet said. I turned my head, slow and dizzy, and saw her standing there, smiling down at him. She was the one holding him, not the nurse. Not Colton. Her. Roger stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder like they were posing for a photo. It didn't make sense. How were they even in here? I wanted to scream, to shout, "Give me my baby," but nothing came out. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My heart was pounding so hard I thought something was wrong with it. The nurse glanced over at me and then quickly looked away, as if she knew she'd made a mistake. I found out later that Colton had stepped out to talk to one of the doctors. Janet and Roger must have taken that chance to walk in, and when the nurse questioned it, Roger apparently said something like, "We're family, we have permission." His voice always had that firm, "Don't argue with me" tone, and in that moment no one did. By the time Colton came back into the room, Janet was already cooing over Caleb like he was hers. He paused at the door. He didn't yell. He didn't stop them. He just froze. Eventually, the nurse took Caleb back and placed him in my arm. But the moment felt wrong, like it had already happened for someone else, and now it was just my turn in line. I held him. I cried, but deep down something had cracked. I felt robbed, like the one thing I had looked forward to for 9 months had been stolen before I even opened my eyes, and no one in that room stopped it. The days after Caleb's birth were supposed to be quiet, soft, full of healing and bonding. Instead, they were full of tension I couldn't shake. I kept replaying the moment Janet held him first, over and over. Each time it hit me harder. I had waited 9 months for that one moment, dreamed about it during every sleepless night and doctor's appointment, and she took it. Without asking, without caring. The worst part, she didn't act like anything was wrong. Janet showed up the very next day with flowers and a new outfit for Caleb, like she hadn't crossed a huge line. She held him again, longer than I was comfortable with, and made comments like, "He already knows Grandma's voice. And look at how calm he gets with me." I sat there, sore and exhausted, feeling invisible in my own hospital bed. Once we got home, it didn't stop. Janet and Roger came by uninvited, saying they were just checking in or dropping off something for the baby. But it was never quick. Janet would walk in, wash her hands like she lived there, and take Caleb out of his bassinet before I could say a word. She rocked him, whispered to him, kissed his forehead, all while ignoring me. At first, I thought maybe it was the hormones making me extra sensitive. I told myself to give it time. But then I noticed the way she spoke to me, like I was just the middle step that got her to Caleb. She started saying things like, "I know how to soothe him better," or "He must get that cry from your side." It wasn't just annoying, it was disrespectful. I tried talking to Colton. I told him I felt like a stranger in my own house. That his mom wasn't just excited, she was overstepping. He rubbed my back and said, "They're just excited, Haley. It's their first grandchild. Don't take it so personally." That sentence stung more than anything Janet had said. I was sitting there with raw stitches, leaking breasts, and zero sleep, and he thought I was just being emotional. So I stopped explaining. I started watching, noticing every look, every tone. I held Caleb tighter whenever they were near. I forced myself to smile even though I felt like screaming. Rage mixed with heartbreak until it became something new, resentment. And every time Janet showed up at our door, pretending she was helping, I felt that resentment growing. She didn't steal one moment. She was still stealing them, one by one. It wasn't until Caleb's 2-week checkup that I finally let the truth slip out. The pediatric nurse, a woman named Claire with kind eyes and a calm way of speaking, asked the usual questions: how Caleb was feeding, how he was sleeping. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and asked, "And how are you doing, Mom?" I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the lack of sleep. Maybe it was the fact that no one else had actually asked me that. I just started talking about how my mother-in-law had held my baby before I did, about how she kept showing up uninvited and treating me like the babysitter instead of the mother, about how my husband said I was being too sensitive. I laughed halfway through telling it, but it wasn't the funny kind of laugh. It was the tired, bitter kind. Claire didn't laugh. She put her clipboard down and said, "That's not okay. You're not overreacting. Your boundaries matter, especially now." That one sentence hit me like a truck. Your boundaries matter. It felt like permission to stop pretending everything was fine. On the ride home, I made up my mind. Something had to change. That night, I waited until Caleb was down for a nap, then sat Colton down at the kitchen table. I told him we were setting rules, not suggestions, not soft preferences, real rules. No more unannounced visits, I said. No more taking Caleb out of my arms without asking. No more acting like I'm just a body that delivered someone else's grandchild. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Haley, come on. This is just going to make everything harder. No, I said. It's already hard. This is supposed to make it easier. He shook his head and said, they're not trying to hurt you. You're making this bigger than it is. That was the moment I realized how far apart we were standing. He didn't get it. Or maybe he didn't want to get it. Either way, I stopped talking. There was nothing else to say. The next morning, I started therapy. I didn't tell him at first. I just looked up a local counselor, booked an appointment, and went. I also started writing things down. Not just what Janet said or did, but how it made me feel. Each page felt like proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't have a plan to fix it all overnight, but I finally had a line, and I was done letting anyone cross it, especially in my own home. The next time Janet came over, I didn't let her hold Caleb. It wasn't a dramatic scene. I didn't snatch him away or raise my voice. I just smiled politely and said, he's napping in my arms. We're having some skin-to-skin time. Maybe later. And I didn't hand him over. Janet blinked like she didn't hear me right. She laughed and reached out anyway, but I didn't budge. I kept rocking Caleb, gently patting his back, and looking right past her hand. The silence in the room stretched. Then she cleared her throat and sat down without another word. That was the first time I really enforced the new boundary. I thought maybe she'd get the hint. Instead, things got worse. Later that night, my phone rang. I answered quietly, standing in the hallway while Colton was changing Caleb's diaper. It was Janet, of course. I don't know what I did to deserve this, she started. Her voice was already wobbly with emotion. I love that baby. I just want to be part of his life. Is that such a crime? I didn't respond. I just held the phone a little away from my ear and hit record. I'd started documenting everything lately. Texts, voicemails, anything that made me feel like I was crazy for protecting my child. I wanted proof. Janet kept talking. You're pushing us out. I can feel it. Roger feels it too. This isn't what family does. You're taking our grandbaby away. I ended the call gently. No arguing, no defending. Just, I hear you. I'll talk to you later. When I walked back into the nursery, Colton was sitting on the floor with Caleb in his lap, staring down at him. He looked tired, but more than that, confused. She just called me too, he said without looking up. Said you were acting controlling. I didn't answer right away. I sat beside him and placed my hand on Caleb's back. I'm not controlling. I'm parenting. Colton nodded slowly. I don't know what's going on anymore, but it doesn't feel healthy. That was the first time he didn't defend them. He didn't say I was overreacting. He just sat there, watching our son and thinking. As the days went by, something shifted. Caleb started reaching for me more. His eyes followed me when I left the room. I was the one who could calm him when he fussed. And for the first time since he was born, I felt like his mom, not just the woman who delivered him, but the person he belonged to. I held that truth close, and I didn't let it go. I invited them over for dinner on a Thursday. It was my idea. I told Colton I wanted to try being civil, keep the peace for Caleb's sake. Truthfully, I just wanted everything out in the open. I needed it to happen on my terms, in my space, where I could control the temperature. I made a simple meal, roasted chicken, green beans, nothing fancy. I set the table carefully, even lit a candle. I wanted everything to look calm and polite on the outside, even though inside, I was bracing myself like I was walking into a courtroom. Janet arrived with her usual too loud voice and too tight hug for Colton. Roger gave me a nod, already looking bored. Caleb stayed asleep in his room, and I didn't offer to wake him. I had no intention of letting them play house that evening. We sat, we ate, we made small talk. Janet couldn't help herself for long. You look tired, Haley, she said, picking at her chicken. Have you tried putting Caleb on a schedule? That's what worked for me. He probably cries so much because he doesn't know what's coming next. I smiled. He actually sleeps better now. We found our rhythm. She hummed, not impressed. Well, if you ever need help from someone who's done this before, just say the word. I am practically raising him anyway. That was it. I looked across the table at her, still calm, still quiet. Janet, I said, setting my fork down. Can we talk about the delivery room? Her eyes narrowed. What about it? I want to talk about how you held Caleb before I did. While I was still sedated. When Colton wasn't even in the room. She scoffed. That's not what happened. Yes, it is, I said, voice even. I remember it. And I've had to carry that moment every day since. Roger spoke up. Now wait a minute. But I ignored him. I pulled out my phone, tapped on a saved audio clip, and hit play. Janet's voice came through, shaky and emotional. You're pushing us out. Roger feels it too. I love that baby. I'm his mother in every way that matters. The table went silent. Colton's fork hit his plate with a soft clink. His eyes stayed fixed on his mom. Did you say that? He asked, voice low. Janet looked stunned, then angry. I was emotional. I didn't mean it like that. But it was too late. Colton turned to me. For once, he looked like he understood. Really understood. I didn't know, he said quietly. I should have known. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just picked up my glass of water and took a sip. The power wasn't in the argument. It was in finally being seen. That night after dinner, after the recording played and the silence stretched too long, Colton barely spoke. He helped me clean up in quiet motions, loading dishes into the sink while I wiped down the table. Caleb was still asleep. The house felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. When we finally sat down on the couch, he turned to me and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't say anything right away. I really didn't get it before," he continued. "I knew you were hurt, but I didn't realize how deep it went. I thought you were just upset about the delivery, but she took something from me, and I let her." I nodded once. "Yeah, you did." He looked at the floor, rubbing the back of his neck. "I want to make it right." The next morning, he called his parents and asked them to come by. I didn't stop him. I stood in the doorway of the nursery, rocking Caleb, when they arrived. Janet's expression was tight. Roger looked irritated, like he already knew where this was going. We sat in the living room. Colton didn't waste time. "Mom, what you said, what you did wasn't okay. You overstepped. You've been overstepping since the beginning." Janet crossed her arms. "We're just trying to be part of his life." Colton looked at her, steady. "You can't be part of his life if you don't respect his mother." Roger scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You're letting her control everything." I stayed quiet, calm, and then I spoke, soft but clear. "If you can't respect me, you won't be part of my child's life. Period." Janet's mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out at first. Then she snapped. "You're trying to cut us off. You're poisoning him against us." "No," I said, gently bouncing Caleb. "You did that yourselves. That was all." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't explain myself any further. Janet stood up fast, grabbing her purse. "Let's go, Roger." He hesitated, like he might say something, but then followed her out. The door shut behind them harder than necessary. I stayed there, holding Caleb, listening to the silence they left behind. It wasn't a peaceful moment, but it was honest. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel powerless. Colton sat next to me, quiet, his hand resting on Caleb's blanket. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The line was drawn, and it was going to stay. We started counseling 2 weeks after the confrontation. I wasn't sure what to expect. Part of me still had walls up, unsure if Colton truly understood what I'd been through. But to his credit, he showed up to every session on time, willing to listen. At first, the conversations were hard. Our therapist didn't let either of us off the hook. She asked Colton why he stayed silent so long, why he allowed his mother to take up space that should have belonged to me. She asked me why I waited so long to speak up, why I didn't let him in sooner. There were tears, awkward silences, a lot of uncomfortable truths. But each week, it got easier. Slowly, things started to change at home. Colton began doing more than just holding Caleb when I asked. He learned how to read our son's cues, when he needed sleep, when he was hungry, when he just wanted to be close. He stopped asking me for instructions and started figuring things out on his own. He even handled the middle-of-the-night feedings a few times without waking me. It felt like I finally had a partner, not just someone watching from the sideline. More importantly, he stood up for me when it counted. When Janet sent gifts, little onesies, books, toys, he opened them quietly, read the notes, and set them aside. He didn't defend her anymore. He didn't excuse it as just being grandma. He saw it for what it was, manipulation dressed up in ribbon. One day, she sent a long letter, for pages handwritten, apologies, explanations, even a few lines that sounded like guilt more than regret. I didn't read most of it, but I wrote her back, just a short note. Calm, clear. I told her I appreciated the gesture, but that things were different now. I said if she wanted a relationship with Caleb, it had to start with respecting, not pretending to. Actually doing it. No more unannounced visits. No more overstepping. No more rewriting the story. I never heard back. But that was okay. Because inside our little home, something beautiful was growing. Caleb started giggling more, reaching for Colton and me equally. Sleeping through the night in his crib, clutching the same soft bear we picked out together before he was. I'd catch myself staring at him sometimes, just watching him breathe, his chest rising and falling with that gentle baby rhythm. And I'd feel it, not just love, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from being seen, from knowing that the storm has passed and you're still standing. I finally felt like his mother, not because I gave birth to him, but because I fought for him, and I fought for myself. You don't always get a second chance at firsts. That's something I had to learn the hard way. I'll never get back the moment Caleb was born. I'll never get to erase the image of Janet holding him before I did, smiling like she had earned something she didn't even ask for. There are no do-overs for that. And for a long time, I thought that meant I'd always feel broken when I thought about it. But I don't. Because what I've learned is that healing isn't about getting even. It's not about revenge or dramatic speeches or proving anything to the people who hurt you. Sometimes, it's just about pulling the power back into your own hands, quietly, steadily, and holding it there like it was always yours. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't burn bridges with some dramatic post or long message. I just took a step back. I created distance. I stopped asking for permission to feel what I felt. I stopped defending my right to be respected as a mother. I started living like I deserved peace. Because I did. Colton and I still have our work. Marriage isn't perfect. Parenting isn't easy. But it's ours now. It's real. And I'm not sharing it with people who can't honor the boundaries I set to protect my son and myself. Janet hasn't come around. Roger either. And honestly, that's fine. Maybe someday they'll understand the damage they cause. Maybe they won't. That part isn't mine to fix. What I know is that Caleb knows who I am. He knows my voice, my smell, the way I rock him when he's sleepy. He looks for me when he's scared. He smiles with his whole face when I walk into the room. That's not something anyone else gets to take credit for. So if you're someone who's been made small in your own story, by family, by in-laws, by people who didn't see you, don't stay there. Take the pen back, even if it's messy, even if it's quiet, even if it's just one sentence at a time. You don't have to win the fight to walk away with your power. Sometimes, all it takes is knowing that you have the right to say, "This is mine. My story. My moment. My child. My voice." And that's enough. What's your take? Was Haley right to set those firm boundaries and cut contact? Or should she have tried to keep the family together for Caleb's sake? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious what you think. And if you enjoy these kinds of real, emotional stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.